Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bay Atlantic University and the Global Policy Institute to this very important event. As you can see, the headline, the celebration and conversation about Black enterprise in the context of Black History Month. My name is Paolo von Schirach. I'm the president of the Global Policy Institute and the chair of Political Science and International Relations at Bay Atlantic University. We're very pleased to have our president, Dr. Bennett, here with us, participating in this important occasion. And I just wanted to welcome everybody, particularly our students, of course, Mentora students and BAU students. Many of you obviously come from other countries, and so we really hope that this is going to be beneficial, particularly to you, because you don't quite have had the opportunity to immerse yourself in the history of the United States and the variety of episodes, and of course including the sad part of the United States that goes back to, as many of you know, I suppose, but perhaps not in all details, what our history is: slavery, segregation, civil rights. It's a long and complicated history, which I would say is not over. It's unfolding, that the progress is still being made. And so we hope that this event today is an opportunity for all of us to become a little bit more educated about the Black experience, and in particular, in this particular context, Black enterprise. Without further ado, let me pass it on to my good friend and colleague Tyler, who's our director at Bay Atlantic University on Diversity and Inclusion.
Thank you, Paolo. And just when you thought I couldn't get louder. Hello, yes, my name is Tyler. I'm Director of Diversity and Inclusion here at Bay Atlantic University. I'm really excited for this panel, and I kind of want to talk about the diversity and inclusionary aspect and why this is such a big deal and it's different here than a lot of universities. We really, I'm a white gay male, and I'm an ally to many groups, but for the people that are part of these communities and stuff, this is what I approach is we need to give them the platform. We need to give these individuals the opportunity to tell their stories and come and develop stuff. And that's what we have today, and I'm excited. I'm excited for our moderator. I'm excited. Well, I researched her first. Okay, I know you too. You will become friends. I'd also like to remind everybody that we will have programming for next month for Women's History Month and International Women's Day. Please keep an eye out for that. It's going to be exciting. It'll be enthusiastic, and that's all. I think the shortest speech I've given. So, with further ado,
oh wow,
you're up, my dear Jessica.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jess Randolph. I'm so happy to be here with you all today to have this really great conversation about Blackness in America through the gaze of social enterprise and entrepreneurship. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to introduce our lovely panelists up here. We're going to go one by one and tell everybody about what we do and where we're based.
So my name is Racquel Williams-Jones. I'm the president and CEO of Can I Live Incorporated. We're a national nonprofit here in the district. Our goal is to reduce dependency on government subsidies. And so we have an emphasis working with public housing families, TANF, Medicaid, any kind of government subsidy, Section 8. And we use creative ways to grow them out of poverty.
Thanks, Racquel. I'm Chris Bennett. I'm the founder of Technology Innovation Law, or TIL. Our mission is to democratize intellectual property by making it easier and less costly for underserved people to protect and monetize their innovation. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I call myself an attorney, because I am, also an entrepreneur and a consultant, and also an educator now because I'm actually doing some work with BAU, and I'm excited about that. So that's it. I'll hand it over to my colleague Ateba.
Hi everybody, my name is Ateba Gaines, and I'm so excited to see some of my students back there in support. I'm a BAU faculty member, and I'm excited about this topic and what we're going to discuss. I live in Virginia, so I commute in. Yes, I commute. It's pretty far, but it's okay. I love it. So I started a social entrepreneurship company called SureVault that raised money for human trafficking shelters in the United States through the sale of celebrity donation shoes. And also, my most recent one that I'm really excited about is creating little superheroes called Unreasonable Kids, where I train kids how to become social entrepreneurs as well, ages 7 to 17. So I'm really excited about talking today and this particular topic because it's
Excellent. And I'll actually introduce myself now. I wanted everybody to go first. Again, my name is Jess Randolph. I'm the CEO and founder of JessBe Creative. JessBe Creative is a local advertising firm. We're also operating in New York City and North Carolina. I started my company because I thought that people deserved help with telling their stories, right? I think that your story is your primary differentiator when you go out and when you sell your products or your goods. So what my firm does is we do that with heart. And again, I'm so excited to be here with you all to talk about the Black experience in America with entrepreneurship. So it's Black History Month. I'm very excited. Black History Month is important to me because I think, you know, sometimes as an African American person, sometimes it's kind of hard to have pride in my history. And the reason why is because oftentimes I think the Black story is often shrouded in darkness. But I will say that I am 6 generations removed from slavery. So as an African American, one of the things that makes me one is because my family actually was brought here to the United States in shackles about 6 generations ago. So that is my experience, and this is actually all of the experiences of our panelists here. Black History Month is naturally something that, or how do I say this? Black History Month is a time to reflect on the accomplishments of all kinds of Black people from around the world. But today we're going to be talking about the African American experience, okay? So what we're going to start out with now is our experiences in corporate America, right? We're all entrepreneurs, but we don't necessarily come into the world with this idea that we want to own a business. And oftentimes for African American people, our why often comes from rejection from white spaces in corporate America. So let's dive right in. No, I'm not pulling punches today. Does anybody want to start?
I'll start. So I worked for the Pepsi bottling group, and I was the recruiter there. And I always found, I don't think it was more or less them pushing me, but I always felt like I had to work harder and better than everyone else because I'm Black. And so I felt this pressure to be an overachiever. Then when I left Pepsi and went to Nike, I felt the pressure even more. When you work for such a great organization, you feel that pressure because it's a Nike and everybody knows the shoes, and that you have to produce. Not to say that the Nike culture was set up in a way that they didn't believe in diversity. They did. They had a lot of networks and communities that supported those of color. However, for me personally, I just always felt that I needed to be better than the rest, that I needed to stand out. So when I started at Nike, they said, well, Ateba, you know that you can't move up to the next position for about a year. And I thought to myself, I'm not staying in this position for a year. I was in it for 3 months. And they said, well, you know, you get, and I kept moving. It was just that tenacity to want to work harder and better than you know, Caucasians and whites. I don't know how you want me to phrase it, but it is the truth. You know, I just felt that push. And so for me, it made me work harder, but I'm thankful for that. Because of that resilience, because of that, I was able, at the end of my career there, and I would have stayed longer if I hadn't gotten married. I became the product manager for the Southeast Asian footwear account, and that was in a short amount of time. So that's the pressure I felt, always making sure that I would perform at top speed, with the spirit of excellence. I didn't want to have an error on anything, and if there was an error, I always checked it and rechecked it because I had to be the best.
Well, from my perspective, I think I tend to be what my sister calls me, a professional student. I just say a nerd. I'm very fact-driven, and if things don't come to me and point to me directly, I tend to block that out. And that's helpful because when I started corporate America, I started with the Bell System, which is the phone company. And I happened to be fortunate enough to get an interview, and the interviewer said to me, just a matter of fact, and his first name is Gene, and I remember it. He's a friend of mine. He said, you know, we've met our EEO quota for this month, so if you get this job, it'll be because you did everything wrong. Now, when I tell that story to some people, they said, weren't you offended? I said, no, I just took it as a statement of fact. But the thing that I took away from it was sometimes part of America is intentionally insensitive. It's intentionally biased. And sometimes it's just somewhat ignorant. And then some folks are enlightened and they actually want to create that environment. I don't know what was Gene's perspective, but I do know that he did get the job and created tremendous value for the Bell system. And he got a lot of recognition for it. So I would say that my experience in corporate America is that sometimes you don't know their intent, but if you have that excellence like Ateba, and my standards have been much better than the typical standard they expect, then eventually that cream will rise to the top, whether it's in that organization or in some entrepreneurial venture or through another path that you choose to create for yourself.
So I don't have that much corporate America experience. I did start out in banking, working for JP Morgan Chase. I was a customer service sales, so I would sell home equity lines of credit. And I remember just, it was cubicles and it's people on the phones, but there was something that was so like bang my head on the keyboard. It was just not innovative enough. It wasn't creative enough. And so, everyone would be standing and I would be the only one standing, and I'm looking out the window as I'm talking, and I'm, selling these people these lines of credit, and sometimes I would just get so engulfed in their life that I would get called in quite frequently and say, you're on the phones for an hour at a time, and you need to sell and get off and sell the next. And sometimes people just had so many issues that I just felt like I could not just sell them this thing and act like I didn't care. So I quickly knew that corporate America was not for me, and I didn't like to be watched over. And so I knew that I would have to get a position where I had minimum management over me. So I went into juvenile corrections and in group homes, and I was able to use my talents and skills to work with the youth there without that oversight. So it was something just very drab about the environment that told me, you're not gonna cut it, so don't even try it. Find what you're really good at. And so I don't have the pressures of, I would have never made it in any of those environments. Not at all.
That's real. I can actually super relate to everyone's story simply because I got to a point, I'm 26 now, but early in my career I got to a point where I realized that if I wanted to be my biggest, best self, I was going to have to create that opportunity for myself. Early on in my career I realized that if I didn't step out in faith and start something new, I would be stuck in my career for years, waiting for that next opportunity to take the next step, and I thought it was BS. So I said, let me start my own thing, right? Let's get to the next question.
First I want to say, 26, you're still young.
Okay.
You got a lot more, and 26 I was at 9th year. You got a lot more life to live. So, and I commend you for jumping out sooner at such a young age. I can only imagine what you're going to do in 10 years from now.
I appreciate that. So I want to talk about barriers, right? So we just talked about how most of us had to step out in faith and create that opportunity for ourselves, or have that faith in ourselves to see past the moment that we were in, to make those career trajectory decisions that really changed the world for us, our own worlds, right? So let's talk about the courage it took, one, to make those steps or those moves, and two, let's get real about the barriers that came with doing so. And what did Blackness have to do with it, right? Because I think sometimes when we are having these conversations about our careers, we're afraid to say, yeah, it was because I'm Black. Or I was pigeonholed because I was Black. Or I was told what I was going to be because I'm Black. So let's have that conversation.
Okay, so real talk. I never thought that there was a problem because I was Black. I'm just being honest. I just didn't. My grandmother was married to a white man. My great-grandmother was married to my great-grandpa, who was white. My great-grandpa's father owned the plantation. So the plantation owner was the owner over my grandmother. my great-grandmother and great-grandfather married and fell in love. Basically, he married the slave, right? So, and because he did that, he gave him all right to all property. His father said, if you marry her, you can't have any of this property, you can't do any of these things. So I grew up in a family that was very inclusive because my great-grandfather was a white man and my great-grandmother was a black woman, and they loved each other. So he gave up everything for her, and he married her, and they had 14 kids. Wow. So for me growing up, for me growing up, I never saw white or black or anything, and until I went to corporate,
Right.
and I experienced that, and then that's when I started thinking to myself, I have to work harder, I have to be better. That's when I started feeling the pressure at a young age, at your age, of making sure that everything I did was with the spirit of excellence. It was a wrinkle in the paper, it was a mist of, because I did customs compliance with a product had to clear international trade. So it was a lot of details in that, and I had to be the best. So all of that, my experience from my great-grandparents, from the experience at Nike, and watching that grow at a time where they started Nike Foundation and where they was breaking off into social entrepreneurship, and then learning from them and my experiences, I always thought that I would sit at we would have these things where they would say, okay, we raised this amount of money and we have this amount of market share. It was like a celebration for the corporation. And I used to always think, but I only got 4% increase in my check. That's not, I'm just making up a number. And I'm thinking, okay, you just went millions and I got 4, that doesn't calculate. And then also, where was the humanistic value in any of that? When you talk about profit, what social impact did you use those dollars for? So that's what stirred me in moving into social entrepreneurship. And so for me, being black didn't hinder me. If anything, it pushed me to be better. And my experiences pushed me to want to be better and just to be better. Another note that I was going to say was when I was, another thing that pushed me was being hungry as a child. I'm just real talk. So I don't sugarcoat anything. My students can tell you that back then. So I was very hungry. So every day I had a plan. If I could find a way to build some type of business or make 75 cents, I can get me, at that time, I'm serious, I can get me a purple drink, crunchy cheese doodles, and then probably some cup of fish. If I had a good day, then I could buy me a Hell's pizza. If I had an even better day, like yesterday I had an ice cream cone with rainbow sprinkles, and I took a picture of it because it reminded me when I was a child and when I had a really good selling day. And I was young. And I would come up with these ideas, like for example, I would go to Seatown and I would take the coupon books and I would go 2 blocks and sell it for a nickel. I had a hustle, basically. So what also gave me my drive was not only my family, a spirit of excellence, but was my street hustle, okay? I tell my students all the time, I'm hood, but I'm intellectual, so I'm hood intellectual. And I say, if I say yo, that's an adjective, and I'm just really excited. So now being a doctor student at Johns Hopkins, I've never lost sight of that. So I understand how to talk at one level, and I understand how to talk at another level. And I think that sometimes as a black woman, black male, I can't speak as black male, but we get caught between deciding who do we have to be, and I say I don't have to be anything but Ateba.
Right. Yes. And I love how your experience and your view of blackness inspired greatness, because I think sometimes it's very easy to not necessarily take the easy way out and talk about, again, the darkness in the black story, but there's a whole lot of light. Also, contrary to popular belief, or maybe it's not popular belief, African Americans are very mixed. Okay, so I got a lot of white in my family as well. In fact, one of my grandfathers, biracial man, black and Indian. He was one of the first scientists at NIH to do a whole lot of things, right? Like he let his experience with blackness and being an Indian man and being pretty much the son of an immigrant, it informed his choices. Right? It informed where his direction was going to be and where his trajectory was going to take him. Right? So that's also a big part of the black story.
So I would say to everyone that the black, his story is actually her story and it's our story. I think every ethnic group can look at its own heritage and see instances of persecution, issues that are encountered, and also many triumphs. I think if you look at Black history, for example, my son just recently returned from Ghana. He did a semester there. He's an engineering student in North Carolina A&T. And we supposedly have family roots in Ghana. This kind of gets to the real point. I tried to trace my family tree, but I'm missing a part of it. All I know is I think my grandfather came in Charleston somewhere as a slave, and I also know that members of my family were farmers in South Carolina. The reason I mention that is because I think one of the things that distinguishes Black history is that we did experience slavery. And we do stand on the resiliency of the folks who actually kept us here and kept us moving forward. And then we stand on the shoulders of the giants who have arisen from that. And I happen to be a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, so Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, those are people that I admire and I look at too, amongst others. The so what in all that is, I think when I look at my entire career, I could probably count 4 instances of explicit bias. That means where someone did something against me because I'm a Black guy. And they were very clear about that. I think what's more dangerous to not only to us as Black people, but to everyone in this room, is implicit bias. It's so important that, as a member of the DC Bar, we have required training on implicit bias. And basically, I'm going to summarize 4 hours for you here in 30 seconds for mercy. Basically, it said that recognize the implicit biases that you bring into any situation, identify them, manage them, and then deliver to your client or the person that you're working with a professional, positive experience that meets their goals. So that means you need to be aware of the issues that you have and work through that. America needs to do the same thing, and we as people need to do the same thing. Be aware of those issues. I think if we do that, then the Black experience becomes an exemplary of what can happen for all people.
So barriers. So most of you guys, if you don't know, I was a welfare mom, and I had one, and then I had another, and then I had another, and then I had another. So I literally had 4 children back to back. Every time I went for a checkup, I was pregnant again. So you're talking about major depression, you're talking about all of the bottom of I felt like we were at the bottom of the barrel. Because there are levels. You know, you have your academia, you have your intellectual, you have your millionaires, your billionaires, you have your middle class, your working class, but there's no feeling like when you only identifying in this bottom level. And that's where in your homeless shelters, and that's in your social services. And so as a mom with 4 kids, back to back, literally a newborn, a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old, okay? I can't imagine, I can't even get the words to tell you what that felt like, but it almost cost me my life. So it almost caused me to kill myself and kill my children. And that's how much pressure was on me to have to stand up to the stereotype of what Black women on welfare or Black women having kids by multiple fathers. It had to stand me up against white America because I was having this experience that did not feel well. It did not look well. And I'm looking at 4 sons. I have 4 boys. And I'm thinking, how am I going to show them how to do this when I can't even do this? And literally almost losing my life, I gave my sons, and I tell this story all the time, I give my sons a bath every night, but there was this one time I'm looking at my life, playing it forward, and I'm thinking, I work every day, I'm broke before I get my check. You know, I'm going to school, I'm trying to help as many people as I can, but I can't help myself. The relationships, it was just so toxic, it was so choking, that I said, I don't want to live like this. And I heard this voice that said, drown them. And as I went to get towels, because I'm about to drown my children, and then I'm about to commit suicide because I knew that if whatever I was about to do was so heinous, I couldn't live with myself. And just like that, during that time, when I went to find who I was going to drown first, they were literally nowhere in my sight. I couldn't see them. They were there, but they were not there. I couldn't see them with my natural eyes. And then all of a sudden, one of them comes in front of me, and he just burst out laughing, eating this cookie, and he's just laughing, and I'm just staring at him in a room, just kind of big and empty like this, and I'm thinking to him, son, you don't even know, this is our last day. I've made up my mind. We're not doing this anymore. And he's just laughing and laughing, and then he's bending over, and as if someone was like tickling him. And I'm thinking, what is so funny? But as I got still and quiet, there was something so releasing in the laughter and the freedom of his laugh. It was full of a hope. It was full of a joy. It was full of something he could see that he was, and it broke me out this dark place. And when I realized what I was about to do, I fell to my knees and I prayed one simple prayer. That prayer was, Lord, if you get me out of this in my right mind, I'll come back and I'll help other women like me. Because I knew there were more women that were stuck like me. And that is what gave me the motivation, the determination to push past anything that I saw. It was surrendering to a power higher than myself. And it was having a vision that says, I am not this. Yeah, I had these children, but I am not this. And I don't care if it takes me 20 years, I will change this. And getting super organized, I got a degree. One of the things I knew, I said, I have to get this paper. The paper was never for me to learn. I can't say every day I go to school, I'm learning, oh, this is what they taught us in sociology. No, it was, you will not disqualify me. You will not count me out. You will not say that I am not significant. I will get every paper that white America says I have to have. I made sure I went all the way up to my PhD, and I dropped out because I ran out of money at that point. But nonetheless, I was determined to have a degree for every child that I had, because you were not going to disqualify me in this hella experience that I had. So the barriers was more me, my mind, my actions, my thoughts, my lifestyle, my choices. I was the barrier that I had to get past. I wasn't expecting that.
Thank you for sharing that. Because there are so many stories that end right there.
True.
Right? And here you are, you're telling that story. That is so important. And again, thank you for just sharing that with us.
That's a real story.
Yeah.
That's real.
And in fact, okay, let's take this route. While I was listening to you talk, I thought a lot about black statistics, right? Negative black statistics that tell us, or stereotypes, again, that call us welfare queens, right? That call folks in the black community absent parents or absent fathers, right? I think one of the many reasons why I was excited to come here today was to just dispel some of that BS, okay? Because there are a lot of things or a lot of obstacles in African Americans' way. But I think it's so important to talk about how we get around them and how we circumvent them and how we use those experiences to actually inspire us to do more and to do better. So I'm really inspired by you. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
So when you say for black boys, I think about the socioeconomic levels, and there's a lot of data that's out there that talks about the crime drop rate. There's a lot of data from Parker, who's from the University of Delaware. What she states is this: the number of black businesses within a community that has a low socioeconomic level affects the crime drop rate. So if you increase the number of black businesses within the community, then it decreases the crime rate. If you think about places such as within the United States that were considered black Wall Streets, right? Mm-hmm. What happened to those black Wall Streets? Well, they were ruined. They disappeared. Why did they disappear? Because sometimes big businesses came in and knocked out the mom and pop shops, and a lot of those businesses that were pivotal points for young black men to see those men as mentors, those families as mentors and examples of the black family and structure and what it's supposed to look like, were destroyed. And therefore it left you in a position where these young black boys had no mentors. They had no examples to look for. No, they had examples. The street hustlers. That was their examples. So they began to sell drugs, and so the drug community began to infiltrate the black community. continually decreasing the socioeconomic level. So if you think about it in form of data and information and research, if you increase, so what needs to happen is that there needs to be more entrepreneurship classes that are free to young people in those low socioeconomic levels, because Hispanics, blacks. You create clubs, entrepreneurship clubs, any type of tools that's going to bring those tools and resources to communities. I think about some camps that I was attending. I taught at a camp. This camp goes for $7,000 per person, and then for youth 7 to 17. These kids come there, their parents pay, but to teach them business, $7,000. Now, if you think about that, nobody in the hood can afford $7,000 course. So we need more instructors and educators going back to those hood places to go and set up classes. Go back, you go visit a school, visit an elementary school, start a club, whatever you can do to bring those resources to say to those young black boys, those Hispanic young boys, the women, the little boys, girls, whatever you want to say, the minorities that's living within that community, that you have other options rather than selling your body. You have other options than selling drugs. You have other options than doing anything illegal that's going to wind you up in jail. Because what happens when you get arrested and you get a felony, that's another issue, because then that eliminates your opportunity to get an education, because now you have this felony and you can't get scholarship money. You can't get FAFSA.
But you know what? I'd like to talk about why that is, right? So when we talk about communities that have to learn to thrive in the hood, let's talk about why they have to learn to thrive in what is now the hood. Has anybody heard of redlining, the practice of redlining in the United States of America?
Maybe you want to explain it. I'm sure
Yeah, of course.
our friends don't know about it.
In the 50s and the 40s, African Americans actually had their hands on some wealth. Okay, and the African American community in America before the Civil Rights Movement, which is an interesting thing to discuss, but we owned businesses that we supported, right? We supported black art. We made the investments that we needed to make in our community because we had no one else, right? Now, before the Civil Rights Movement, right, we're dealing with segregation. We're dealing with black codes, which is a little older. But the point is, black people knew that all they had were black people, okay? Now, let's say, for example, I wanted to buy a house in a white neighborhood. You can't do that. Why would I want to buy a house in a white neighborhood before the Civil Rights Movement? Anybody have an idea? It's because I knew that I needed to invest in property that would pay off for me, right? Does anybody want to take us to the next step?
Okay, so then I would preface that in saying that basically this is what happened. The government, in this document, some researching that out. The government said, hey, what we want to do, back when the president, there was some, I'm not going to name the presidents, they were running. They needed more votes. So what they said, we're going to introduce black business into the African American community to get them to vote for this particular person. They created a program, but if you look at the documents on the program, they have all these programs that, it was like the SBA, but it's for SBA for blacks. So, but I'm not going to use the name that they called it. You can look that up yourself. But when you look at that document, they had all these businesses that were allotted during that time, but what happened, those businesses did not survive because they did not get the business funding. Also, what they did is they segregated the businesses. So they said, you can have a business, but you can't sell your product in the white neighborhood.
Right.
So then, therefore, the money that you was raising with your business could only be sold in areas that were low socioeconomic levels. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? That makes no sense. So basically, you're saying I can have a business, but you're not going to give me money to own a business, and then you're saying I can only sell my product to people that don't have money. It didn't work. So that's why the decline, and then also big businesses came into communities and it closed mom and pop shops.
And so just to add to that, what I want for those that don't have a context or a frame of understanding is when we came here as slaves, we were an asset. We built, we created everything you see. And so when segregation...
Even the White House around the corner,
Absolutely.
like it's ridiculous.
But we never really, the game plan was not to be competitors or equal partners with white America. So when segregation or when things started to get heated up and it was time to, relax these laws, they never accounted for us to be equal counterparts. So then a lot of sophistication went into the legislation and maneuvering and tricking people out of their land, the sharecroppers and things of that nature. But even if you fast forward all the way up, even go into the 60s in my world in public housing, when it was first created with black families, once black families started to move in, you couldn't move in with your husband, like the male could not live with you, okay? And so just think that so many families got broken up right then and there because simply they would state that the man could not live there. So men had to say goodbye to their wives and their children. It was just a law. It was a law that they put to whereas because the rents were like $5. You know, the rents were super, super cheap. And there's movies out there, I think it's called Claudine, is one movie about Claudine. I think, I always wanted to remake it like something modern. Claudette, somebody. But this is a real thing that a lot of parents men started to try to get work. And black men could not compete with the government that gave this black woman and family Medicaid for her children and her, housing for her family and her, food stamps for her family and her, and that became to just totally ostracize that black man even further. So going out and trying to provide for themselves, they were going to either do that or starve to death, literally. And so whether they were selling drugs, playing numbers, games, whatever you name it, it became a part of a racketeering that fed the criminal justice system, where we got harsher penalties for certain crimes that more blacks will commit. So when we see poverty, we see check fraud, check cashing, those are crimes of poverty. Those are crimes that people commit because they're poor, because they've been locked out of a main economy. But that stuff still exists today. So we're not as far removed as we would like to believe. Some of us are. It's really like, how do you take this conversation forward? So I do believe in making sure that these entrepreneurs, like small businesses, are cultivated. And that's what we do here at Can I Live in partnership with BAU. We have an entrepreneurship institute that only focuses on under-resourced, underserved entrepreneurs. And we give them the gamut. Like, we're making sure they have their business license, their chamber memberships, their marketing tools. We have a student here today, I see. We give them everything that they need to launch, to try it as best as possible to level the playing field a little bit, just a little.
And to build on that, I think the first recognition is these are structural issues that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Whether you can go back to the Civil War, pre-Civil War, where actually, if you look at from the time the country was founded, blacks owned property, they owned land, and then there's a combination of free labor, which is the driving force for the South. Free labor, in essence, brought in to help them build up their wealth in the South, and then laws that were created to take away land from like Virginia's, and to actually create an environment where you can manipulate this free labor. If you look at that structural point, the structural point of families and women that were created, you have a situation where you need solutions that address those structural underpinnings. And that comes from programs that help in the specific neighborhoods, but it also comes from empowering and being resilient. And I want to build on something that the panelists said, because my mom, I called her a lean, mean parenting machine. She was about 5'9", 135, and she found solutions. I didn't know my birth father, but I had 8 uncles, and there were surrogate fathers. My first friend was a roach on the wall. I called him Irving. But then my mom actually looked at me and she said, you know what? You're a solution looking for a problem. You're a pretty bright guy. I want you to go out and I want you to do some positive things. She got me into a Catholic school, which was nearby. And then I basically found my way through hard work and guidance, where that when I finished high school, I was talking with a friend. We looked back and we said, let's look at our friends. 50% of our friends that we knew were dead or in jail. Dead or in jail. But our mom and their parents had gotten us through that point. So where we are right now is an opportunity of hope, where you can have opportunities to address the structural issues that are going on in the neighborhoods as far as knowledge, income equality, but also opportunities to educate people, to be open, to be supportive, to be managers of their implicit biases and help society move forward. Because at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you help the black members of the family, then you're also indirectly helping the white members of the family, the brown members of the family, the yellow members of the family, the red members of the family. And a lot of it starts here with experts and specialists like these and folks like you.
That's excellent. In fact, just to continue to piggyback off what you shared, I believe that if you are an immigrant or a new American, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to make this American thing work for you, I think that you can look at Black stories and Black history as an opportunity to see that the American experience can be whatever you want it to be. You can own a business. You can go to work for somebody you really want to work with. You can start a family. You can be a homemaker. Whatever you want to do, it's possible, but you have to do it your way. I think that corporate America, which is a predominantly white space, I think that one of the reasons why it's so evil is because your journey is one journey, and there's no options. There aren't any options. There's no variation. There's no deviation from that. But again, if you look at Black history, like, all Black history is folks coming in with nothing and making a whole lot of something out of literally nothing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be an African American person. I don't know if y'all have grandparents that were born on sharecropping farms, but I live with it's a 3-generation household. It's myself, my mom, and my grandma. My grandma's 87, old as Methuselah. But, her early memories are in North Carolina picking cotton with her brothers and sisters. That's what I come from. We are hard workers. We make opportunities out of literally nothing. And I'm sure that the 3 of you have stories like that. I don't know if you have a quick story about your grandparent, but if you have it, share it. I think those are important.
Well, my cousin is Jackie Jordan Curser. So
Olympic
she's my
champion.
Cousin, yes. And so for her, she has a huge story, growing up in poverty. She had the same grandfather, like Sylvester Gaines, but growing up in poverty, she had to figure out that run thing, and she was persistent. I remember you hear the stories about that she didn't get it the first time or the second time, but you have to keep coming back and working on your skill, working on a trade, working on a passion that you love, and you can succeed no matter what ethnic background you come from. There's a lot of hindrances out there, but I believe that if we are going to those communities where there's those that don't have, and we use our education, our skill sets to give back, that we can encourage greatness. And that's what I hope to do for the rest of my life. And so I pass away. And that's my goal. But yes, Jackie Jordan Curser, she was an amazing runner and Olympian and all kinds of things. So she's a testimony of not having and then doing something great with her life.
Well, I have a story of built-in resilience, but it's not my grandparents' side. My Aunt Carrie, what I would argue was the toughest person in the world. She's really short, really strong, and she allowed us to live with her for a while. We were between houses when I was young. And it just so happened that at Aunt Carrie's house, she lived on a hill, and I've been bugging my mom to teach me how to ride a bike. And she was in a hurry. She worked and she did a lot of things. But finally one day I caught her at the right moment. She was trying to get to the car to get to work. And I said, teach me how to ride a bike for like the millionth time. I'm exaggerating. She said, sure. She said, go get the bike. I got the bike. She put me on the bike at the top of the hill, pushed me down the hill and said, ride. Now, it's amazing what you can do with the right motivation. First time down, I hit a mailbox. I was in pain. She said, get up, hurry up. We needed a little first aid. She took me in the house, gave me first aid, put me back on the bike, pushed me down the hill, said, ride. I made it all the way down the hill into a bunch of browns at the bottom, which was a T intersection. Now, quick stop. It could have been a car coming at the T intersection. I didn't know that, and that was cool. She said, get up. Came up. She put it on the third time. I rode the bike. So it is amazing what you do with the right motivation and resilience, and you come back and still be alive today.
Yes.
Wow. So I know from my family, I would say, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and a lot of our family, it was heavy into the crack cocaine era in the 80s, so a lot of our family got broken up. So I don't have those stories of grandma and grandpa. My grandfather is Caucasian, so it was always weird looking at pictures on the wall. Everybody's black, and then there's this one white, blue-eyed, long-haired guy. We're like, who's this guy? But everybody died before we were of age to do anything. So if anything I can say about resilience, I remember the day going into the welfare system and they told me, you know, we'll give you this money, but you have to come out of school. They said, because we will not pay you to get a law degree. I was getting a bachelor's in economics and politics degree at the time. They said, you would have to go to school to be a nurse's assistant, certified nurse's assistant. And that was my ultimatum, that I had to relinquish my monies back to the government, go to do CNA, and I don't have anything against CNA, but I don't have the stomach for drool, let alone anything else. So at that moment, I remember saying, you keep your money, I'm going to stay in school. And it was that moment I had to go home, and I had to figure out, you don't get no more money, how are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to do this? And you get real creative with, you know, maybe, and then I started to sell. I was a good writer, so I would sell greeting cards. And it was when I took that step into motion, you got to take the first step. I swear, I would get a call and say, hey, I got these photos. I know you have a greeting card company. You want all of these photos? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow. And I started my first greeting card company because someone gave me photos, just because I had a gift to write and I put that step in motion. So the lifestyles is all about what you do under the tremendous power. And I remember saying, because in the welfare game, you have to lie. You have to lie to tell, no, I'm not making that money, I'm not. Because they ask for everything. And they make it impossible for you to move forward. So I remember I said, you know what? If I have to lie for it, I don't want it. It's not for me. Because I wanted to make sure that as I'm moving up, my integrity was important. It was about who you are. And when I just started to tell the truth to the caseworkers, then they would say, oh, you could do that. So when I came and said, well, I run a business, and my business made this amount of money, oh, you could do that. And I'm like, you could run a business on what? Yeah. And I'm like, why are you not telling anybody about this? What do you mean you can run a business? Well, just give me your Schedule C. So it was me choosing to be better that I started to find rules that I can float on. And that's how I was able. So I love to, I show people, I'm like, nope, there's a navigation. It's underground. It's behind, it's not what you see. But I was able to use both the education system, because I would tell my caseworker, yep, I got a nice check for refund, $7,500. And they would say, nope, we can't use that. I'm like, why can't you use this $7,000? Because every time you make money, they take it. They would say, because it's not income. So I was like, I'm never coming out of school. That's when I was a professional student. I was in school for 12 years, never coming out. Because I was able to keep my benefits and then run my business. My benefits, the school helped me protect my benefits, and the small business helped me shelter my income legally. And then with those two things, it was like a ladder that I was able to climb myself up, me and my 4 sons, and we was able to reduce it. So sometimes you just got to choose who you want to be and let that chart.
What does your tickling boy do now?
Nazareth is actually, so I have Messiah is my oldest, Nazareth is, Messiah is 21, Nazareth is 20. I have Jordan here, my son is here, he thought I was going to get away with that. Jordan, and he'll be 18, and Genesis, my baby, is 17. And so the tickling one, they're both in Monroe College in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And Jordan is looking to come to BAU. So he's here looking, he just graduated. He's coming to college. So gratefully, I was able to raise 4 boys that never saw it inside of a jail cell. That never never was in the cuffs of the police officers. And that's a big, big deal for me. But he is, all my sons are they each have a very special place. So thank you for asking. I'll let them know that you asked about it. Because initially in the beginning when I would tell the story, they were young. They couldn't handle that. They thought they did something wrong, that I would want to terminate them. And I'm like, it wasn't you, it was me. And so they hear the story and they've gotten over it, right, Jordan?
So what's next for everybody on stage? Do we have any new projects or new events that are coming up?
You can talk about it.
I have two projects. One is, I mentioned TIL. We're going to be doing a crowdfunding round to raise money to turn what we do into software, because we think that's going to allow us to offer it to more people. And just to give you a sense of it, the way we describe it is if you look at Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, there's language that basically says if you can think, you can create intellectual assets. And it gives you an opportunity to make money. Whether it's a copyright, a trademark, a trade secret, a patent. And we think that that's an opportunity that a lot of people haven't had a chance to participate, because it costs a lot of money, it's complex. We're going to simplify and make it available to more people. That's one of the projects that we're working on, the crowdfunding round. The second one, which actually builds on that, is working with Ateba's organization of Unreasonable Kids and promoting social entrepreneurship from 7 to 7-year-olds by adding intellectual property to their entrepreneurship and giving them an asset when they actually start with those ideas. And so I'm going to hand it to her, because I just get excited watching her do what she does.
No, because he's like, he came in, and he attended my class over the weekend. And so I have like these little kids, they're like 6 to like 10. And I'm like, what school are you in? I said, you're not in elementary, you're not in middle, you're not in high school, you're in college. You know, so they're like, yeah, we're in college. So I get excited teaching these young kids like about business, and not only business, like social entrepreneurship. That's my favorite. You know, to help them understand how to define the problem, create a solution, and then create an SE, a social enterprise, these young little ones, so that they can raise money to fight a particular issue, like whether it's poverty or homelessness, and you know, you have to segment all that, and we do all the research. And then the cool part is that when he came to the class, my kids, they know the 4 Ps, don't they?
You know the 4 Ps of marketing, by the way,
Yes.
in case you wonder.
They know the 4 Ps of marketing. They know the difference between qualitative, quantitative research, primary, secondary research, and they're little. And they could probably out-research you. Because they're no joke. And then they could present their pitch and out-pitch you. Just let them come up here, especially little Isabel. She's 8. She's powerful. But yeah, so it's cool to work and teaching kids how to create businesses and how to be social entrepreneurs. I tell them that they're real life superheroes. You know, I always tell the story how I always wanted to be Wonder Woman, and you know, everybody does. I just wanted to be Wonder Woman. I wanted the like golden lasso, and I just wanted to be, you know, just rock. And so this is my opportunity to be a superhero by teaching little kids how to be superhero. I call them my little lassos, my golden lassos. And I have more than one than one. She only had one. I have a lot. So, yeah.
So upcoming projects, we have currently, we run a called Roby, the resident-owned business incubator here at BAU. And so we're about to graduate about 30 under-resourced entrepreneurs. And they will have their business license, and they will have, you know, their chain, but they'll be able to launch and make some money. That's one. But the biggest thing we like, we're a federal policy entity, meaning public housing, Section 8 is all federally run. And so there are laws such as Section 3, if anybody ever heard about it, says to the greatest extent feasible wherever HUD monies are spent, these training, employment, and contracting opportunities should be afforded to residents. Well, every one of our businesses are Section 3 businesses or under-resourced businesses. So we're having an expo on April 30th. It's a virtual expo where this is really the district's first or the nation's first expo catered to this type of business. It's on robyconnect.com, and it's called DC Unlocked, because we believe we've gotten the formula to unlocking not just capital, but potential for our communities. And then in June, we have a play. We're doing a dramatization, because in our community, you have to be live and direct, you have to be, you know, animated and visual. And so because we're an educational organization, we have Get Your Hands Out My Pocket. It's a dramatization for child support. So we have a story that we're talking about 5 men, all from different backgrounds, who still come short in the child support system. And Get Your Hands Out My Pocket, I love it because it really is relative to this whole undercurrent of social injustice. Because since the beginning of time, we have not been able to just live and thrive freely without somebody's hands in our pockets trying to get a piece of money that we hadn't even known we had. And so we want to make sure that those underlinings are there. That's about, I think, June 25th, 26th, 27th. They'll be on the DC Black Theater Festival week. But it's about time to start having resources, because right now, black men, they're not deadbeats more than they're dead broke. But yet their lifestyles, I was a part of that, their lifestyles are kind of creating these just cycles of trauma. And so, whatever we can do to help people make better decisions, make better policies, and run better, more effective programs is what we aim to do. So we're excited about those two things coming down the pipeline.
And your new books.
Yeah, well, the books are a part of, well, that's a big thing. Thank you, Sanam. So we have, one of the things I was able to do as a welfare mom is take what I had and I created these books. So we have Get Your Hands Out My Pocket is a hands-on guide to avoiding the child support system for young men. And Get Your Hands Off My Butt is the hands-on guide to avoiding the welfare system. So I teach youth and young adults how to avoid both child support and welfare, because if you can avoid a child from having, or a young teenager from having children early, you can avoid them from being dependent on welfare and or entering the court systems. And so what we're doing with the male book, particularly, proceeds that come from the books, the plays, the paraphernalia that we're selling, we're actually canceling child support debt for fathers. So 50% of everything we make will go to cancel child support debt, but they have to be active. They cannot be deadbeat. They have to be working, really, because there's a correlation between poverty and dependency on welfare and child support. So when moms get child support, they're on welfare less, longer. And so we want to increase child support payments to the mom. We want to decrease the debt and the criminal punitive damages that come to that father for just not being able to pay. And we believe that that will be a movement that a lot of people can just kind of get behind. So we're really, that's a big deal. We're excited about that. So thank you. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to open the floor up for questions, but before I do so, I want to wish my West Indian, Caribbean, and African brothers and sisters a happy Black History Month. I know we focused on the African American experience, but your experiences are just as important. So much love to you if you are West Indian, Caribbean, or African. So, any questions?
I think I'm all that. I'm all that and more.
And if not, then happy Black all.
You need a microphone. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Sadeo December. For the population, by any chance, do you work in religious institutions? Because mostly that's where the moms are, and the struggle goes there before it goes to a lot of social enterprise, especially for the youngest boys. Do you happen to work in religious institution to include the moms?
So that's a good question. While we know that they're there and it could be a great target, the church or any religious institution, particularly, I've not found the African American church to be open too much, because I guess, when you're challenging the status quo, sometimes some of the pastors are, on boards and stuff. It just becomes political and it becomes messy, and then it just becomes like, is this church really supposed to be doing what it does? So I would love to open a conversation. I think there needs to be a forum like this for religious leaders and just to kind of say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we need, how can you help? and then bridging those gaps. But if you're connected, by all means, we don't discriminate against any religion. You know, so we would welcome the conversation or welcome the opportunity to serve.
I mean, just from our perspective, we meet the entrepreneur downtown, uptown.
At the corner, in the hood, at the park.
That's one of the benefits of being technology driven and online, so we can connect with them. And we have clients from California down to Ethiopia, as well as back here in the States.
Oh, I just answered. I said in the hood, at the park.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I think Sanam had a question. Oh.
Hi, my name is Wangari Kamau, and thank you so much. You're an incredible panel, very inspiring. And I'm the founder and CEO of a company that I recently formed after spinning out of international development. And my question to Ateba and also Chris is, in your entrepreneurship program, are you thinking of incorporating financial literacy? Because I find that that is one of the other big challenges that not only just the African community faces, but many Black communities. Even when I look at people who should know what they're doing, there are all these young Black and brown people going to work, and they have no idea which 401k to look at, what to choose, how to do their Roths, etc., etc. So I think maybe that might be something in your future you might think of.
So you're absolutely right, because the other day I can't talk to so many people. I can't remember who was talking to, but somebody asked about the financial literacy part, and that's an important piece, because if you make the money, how do you keep it? You know, we have to understand how to invest, how to save, and all those things. So yes, that's also something that I think later on in some projects would be something that we would incorporate. But for right now, for the purpose of what we're building right now in the model, can't talk into the details of it, but we're focusing more on the SE part and the IP part as a partnership. But yes, definitely, a lot of people ask about that as well. And there is a program that does that that I've been talking to someone about. He has his own program. That'd probably be more of a partnership, bring that partnership in to teach that piece.
And that's directly how we do it. We partner with, we specialize on intellectual property and making it available through software, and we partner with the right folks to bring together a full ecosystem to help people address what they need.
And my next question is for Ateba, for
Racquel.
For Racquel. Because your personal story, I'm sure many people tell you, just blows people away. Thank you for sharing that very moving and personal story. I noticed that you worked in lending, mortgage lending, lines of credit. Do you think subconsciously there is all this history about predatory lending, subprime? Is there something in there about that? If you can talk a little bit more.
So when you were asking them, the thoughts did come to me, and I know there's a population. So we have a very dysfunctional relationship with the government. On one hand, it feeds us, and on the other hand, it has done us such great injustice. So when you start talking about these 401s and 529Bs, because we weren't ingrained, our parents didn't teach us that, we look at that like, that's one of those things. Like, that's one of those. And so we all stayed ignorant to it because of the dysfunctional, because the government has never said, hey, yes, we did this to you. And we continue to do it. And so there's this, I'm going to get it, but I'm going to get over. And so you have this two vipers, because I say if you're going to get into it to get over, your mindset is probably not as different as the one trying to get over. And so there is definitely a mindset that will stop. Plus, if you receive Social Security or welfare, you can't have but so many assets. So with Social Security, your assets can't go over a certain amount of money. And in DC, I think the threshold was $2,500 of assets. So why teach us to build and save, and if you're going to penalize us for when we do? So those are the nuances ingrained in the institutional fabric of America that people like myself has just have a very untrusting relationship with. So yeah, that's another forum that you might want to moderate next time.
Can you tell us more about details about your program about teaching young women how to become self-sufficient? Just some more granularity, some more details of what's included in your curriculum, let's call it, and what your biggest challenges are.
So most of the public housing population are female. They're like, with me with the same story. So most of the time when they come in, they have to be assessed. We do an assessment to see where they're innately skilled. Because sometimes they choose the easy route. They'll choose CNA because the social services told them to do it, but they're not called to it. They don't have the skills for it. So we do 2 assessments that give us an insight into their personality and mind, and then 1 into their heart and passion. Then we align them, and then we find an educational program that fits along that paradigm. And then we use my story as the tool to motivate, and because most of them have the thoughts of suicide and killing their kids, and they will tell you. And then we do some type of exercises like mental health, where we'll say, write down a thought that you have that you hate. Put it in a bag, don't put a name on it, and we start reading those thoughts. And sometimes it's just knowing that, hey, I'm not the only one with these crazy thoughts in my head. Everybody else's thoughts is like that. It's scary on our part to know that these thoughts are going on in people's lives. So we're quick to partner with mental health providers to come in and do that. We do a financial literacy, we do a digital literacy, we do, but in the entrepreneurship. So everybody's not built for entrepreneurship. However, the systems, whether it's workforce development, any kind of human services, it is a cookie cutter. They're just saying, hey, go out, get your resume. Resume writing. We don't need resume writing. We need to be free from the chains that bind us through laws and policies. And so we go in knowing you guys know what this is. So we're not honest with the social workers. We don't come forth with the person that we should probably avail ourselves in our thoughts, but they'll call CPS and take our kids away. So it's a constant rat race. So what we try to do is, I know the story is very powerful, and I use that, and I use real life examples of how I overcame. And what almost immediately happens, hope comes into their eyes. You can see hope. Because they come into you downtrodden, heavy, low, like, I'm stuck. But then when they leave you, they have spark and vision, and they have a tenacious appetite to do something. That is an intangible that you cannot write on a resume. It's not quantitative. I think that's the word. Quantitative. Or qualitative. I always get they're like, no, we need more data that says this. I'm like, well, I'm okay with the data that you can't read. Because that's the data that long term will be able to sell. We have an initiative by 2030 to move 1 million moms off the welfare system. So it's called 1 million moms off welfare. 1 million moms, and it's doable. If every housing authority, if every social service, if everybody took their part, and we work with 300 moms a year over, I think it's 30 years, you can move 1 million moms through. But it takes a concerted effort. It takes everybody to put in on these plans. It can't just be me and my organization and my team. It has to be us. So we're excited about our new partnership with BAU. When we came here, I thought, an institution that wants to give education with no debt. That sounds like somebody. That sounds like a friend. Because I have like $300,000 in student loans. I really do. And so I can't even get a house if I wanted to. I would have to be a millionaire to qualify. And so I have to already be creative. So when I saw that and I didn't always feel comfortable in passing that debt model over to single parents that says max out on your student loans, because that's what we would do. Max your student loans. She's smiling like, yes, I know student loans. we would say, do your FAFSA, max out on your student loans, take your money, pay your rent off for 6 months, buy a car, do what you need to do. And then once you're out of the rat race of working every single day, you are now free to think and create and solve problems. People who live day to day, they do not solve problems. At least not just the one in that moment. And so, you know, it's a special place that we have a special home here, the one institution that I believe will give you a bachelor's degree for almost for free. That is unheard of.
I have a question for you. So currently we're working on passing, in Virginia, trying to pass expungement rights, expungement for human trafficking victims that have, and those that prostitute themselves, that have records, because that also is a thing for single moms. That, you know, you may do that to get a record, get a felony record. So, but there's a lot of programs out there, social programs that help you do the resume, help you do this, help you do that. But then when you apply for a job, you can't get a job because you have a record. Do you ever run into any cases where you have clients that have records that can't get a job because they can't expunge because they have a record?
All the time. And those are the ones,
overcome that?
entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the best remedy for those with barriers.
But there's some states that you cannot get a business license if you have a felony record. So they can't even do entrepreneurship.
Well, no, hold on. Get creative now. You got to get creative. So I'm thinking, if someone was here and this was a state where you couldn't get a business license, I'm already thinking, well, where's your mom? Where's your dad? Where's your family? Get a partnership. You know, you can own a business and not be on the paper per se. You can have a partnership agreement in the back that says, hey,
hustle.
You gotta hustle.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. And to get somebody a family member to partner with to get that license, but also policy changes is good.
True, absolutely.
To advocate for policy changes, that it would allow a single mom to expunge her record, or especially human trafficking victims, because
I never even thought about
that's
that.
a common sense, that's a common sense law that should be in place because they were forced. So now they're out of the industry, and now they're trying to find employment. They can't get a job because they have a record. So I just was curious as to how you handle that expungement.
Well, like the shell companies, you know, what is that movie about the shell companies? They're a company with no one there actually there.
Panama Papers.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, in a legal way, of course, you don't want to get arrested, but it's the same thing. I own it, but you don't find me on paper. I got a partnership agreement a managing agreement on the side.
It is making something out of nothing.
There's a question.
All right. My name is Tishinga Monde from Zimbabwe, and I've actually got two questions. One is for Chris Bennett. Backdating to your first phrase or your first statement, you mentioned something about statement of fact, ignorance, and insensitivity. Right? I think that personally, us as the black majority, to say in any community, or mainly let's talk about America, it's a statement of fact that we need to put in 200%. Where others are putting 100%, by others I mean Caucasian, while the ones that we're working against, we need to put in 200%. That is a statement of fact. But don't you also think that in that same context, we then, like for example, the job example you gave, we also need to agree that, or rather go in with no bias towards the insensitivity, and realize the statement of fact and not have ignorance towards it, that we need to put in 200%. So let's just say the way you were saying the quota was full and all that, you already need to be in a certain mindset that you need to put in 200%, but on the other hand not have the bias of insensitivity. What do you think about that whole situation, that this bias of insensitivity should not bring you down, but just agree the statement of fact that you need to put in 200%?
What you're saying. And let me thank you for the question, and let me respond in a way that I think fits it on the head. I wouldn't aspire or say the statement of fact should have to be 200%. I would say the statement of fact has to be excellence. your own personal level of excellence, and that complements your doing you. One of the benefits I've had in my career is that my own standards that I found when people did performance reviews were so high. If I had a bad day, I was still better than the average because I aspire to excellence. And I find that that aspiration to excellence is motivational to others. And if you apply that across the board, then you free yourself from the implicit bias that's going to happen because you have a fro, because you're black, because you're fat, because you're gay, because you're short. You deliver excellence. And the challenge and decision comes for you is, do you want to continue to offer that excellence in that organization if they don't treat you well, or you want to take it somewhere else and start your own thing, or work in some other environment? So I wouldn't say 200%, and this is my nerdy lawyer side saying, because I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know what's in the mind of the person who may say, yes, I want to work with you, I know I don't. What I do know is what are my standards. And at the end of the day, I'm accountable for what I do. So hopefully I'm trying to address your question in a way I think that.
No, thank you. You actually have pretty much give it your excellence, your par excellence. Thank you. The second question is directed to Racquel. You mentioned, and maybe also in conjunction with Jessica, you mentioned something with how your friend had made it or something like that, and you asked about how did you make it. Can you give me some intel on how they did? I think it was a business that they had done, and also maybe I'm missing now. Sorry. Yeah. I think it was something to do with someone had made a business, how they were making money, and they didn't quite know about it.
Was it what we were just talking about just now?
Okay, let me rephrase that question.
Okay.
So I feel like in our community, when someone then makes it, they do not share the information with the others to bring each other up. Which then goes to link with what Jessica was saying, that for you to achieve the American dream, so to call it, that you want, you need to create, build, and work towards it to make it how you want it to be. So those two are then linked in the sense that, okay, for example, Jack here then makes it to the top, right, through whatever way. I feel the problem that we have is we do not, once you're at the top, you do not bring your fellow brothers and sisters up. So that then constantly creates a depression on our community, that we're not bringing each other up when one makes it to the top. We just want to keep on thriving at the top, and yet it's not an individual fight, it's a togetherness fight.
So yeah, I get that, and this is a good, so let me just see if I can put it right in that middle lane right there. So this goes back to, you have to choose who you want to be, because that is a real thing. So when you say coming to the table with your 200%, okay, what if everything you see right now is a lie? The system we believe, everything that was created out of a place of fear, a place of malicious intent, a place of, so we have taken American culture, Western European culture, and we have put it on a scale as the thing of justice, as the thing to equate all things. What if that was just a lie? So then you have to then say, like you just said, it's not a 200%, it's who I choose to be. Because real prosperity says, I am so full of love, the things that money can't buy: wealth, love, joy, peace, happiness. I want this so much because I am that I would want it for you, and I would want it for you and you, regardless of what you look like. That is true prosperity. That's where America has to be, and that is not where we are. Because if you will withhold information with me, it's because you fear that I will exceed you, because you have worked so hard to get where you are. So now so it's that filth, whatever that is, that the grime, I call it grime, because it's not full prosperity, it's not fullness of love. So I had to make a conscious decision, and I'll take everybody in the room. Make a conscious decision to be what it is you want to see. If you desire to see a society that is full and just and loving, you have to be that. Because a seed only produces after its own kind. You can't grow an apple and get an orange. If you grow corruption, you will get corruption. And that is what our system has done. And what you see today is just a fruit of it. So I want justice, I will become justice. I want love, I will become love. And therefore, I will withhold no good thing because I am so full of it. I produce it. And we need to get to that place where, because the more production of that you have, eventually the old will pass away.
And I actually want to add on, someone told me that that mindset is what people do when they operate out of lack, right?
True.
So when I think about operating in a space of love and giving, again, you step into that place to become the thing that you want to be. I think sometimes, especially Black entrepreneurs and business owners, when we talk about not giving each other the answers, right? That's us mimicking whiteness. Mm-hmm. We don't have to mimic whiteness to succeed. And the funny thing is, a lot of my mentors are actually white men, right? Mm-hmm. And they tell me, just show up as your best self. I say, well, you know, my grandma, my grandpa, you know, there's this thing where I have to overperform, overexceed. I have to bring 3,000%. And my mentors will say, just be yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I think our generation has something really important to bring to the table for Black people today and the ones that come after us, right? We need to teach them now that what we bring right now, nappy head and all, is exactly what we need to bring.
Yep.
Right? I think that that's powerful. I think that's revolutionary. So again, it's about rejecting feelings of operating in lack. It's about saying, okay, I see sis over here and bro over there, they need the answers. Let me go over there and help them. Let me volunteer. Let me step into that space. Because we all come up together when we, you know, want to see each other do well. I think it's that
And
simple.
I think not feeding the stereotype. I think if we, sometimes the perception is white is right.
Exactly.
Let's not feed that, and let's come with confidence that we are who we are, and let's address it. And without holding that, I'm pointing to Sanam because she's a white woman, but she's not really, not white America. She's not white American, y'all. Here's the difference, okay? But I can't, you know. But what if we just address that thing, like, and we overcome it? Because obviously, what has been instituted upon us has been done out of fear. So what if I just confront it with an just fullness of love? And I understand you have this perception, but that is not real. It's not truth. It's not my reality. And I think when we start feeding it is when we start to self-doubt, when we start to think we are less than, we're not adequate, we gotta do more, we gotta be this. We're feeding this lie that told us we never was enough from the beginning. I think we have to do some self-work and then face it head on with everything we have.
I agree with you. I remember the first time when I let a wrinkled paper just go. I was like, oh my gosh. But I have to work on myself. I have to understand that I am not perfect. Exactly. And I'm going to make a mistake. And that it's okay that if it's a wrinkle in that corner. But I was like, no, but it was hard. But, so when you said that, I just thought about that. But it's your own process. But it's also an understanding of who you are. I think if you understand that who you are and who you was designed to be, then you don't worry about somebody taking your idea, because they can't take out your idea because it's individually yours. Yeah. Nobody can produce it like you can. Nobody can do it like, I can't do IP like Chris could do. When he talks about it, I go to sleep. I'm sorry. And when I do it, I get excited, you know, but he probably has the different effect. But that's where we join, we partner, because he has a skill set and he knows what he does. And I know what I do, and when we put it together, there's a synergy in that. But you have to understand who you are, then there's no competition, because you understand I can share this information because I'm confident in who I stand, who I am.
And I just want to just really piggyback. There's something in my thought. I used to work for the General Assembly. I worked for North Carolina Congressional. And I can remember going there, and I felt like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. You know the whole story about the Great Oz. And here's all these white men. And I'm like, oh my God, they have the answer. And when you work behind it, you know the story of Oz. You're like, you got pajamas on in the You don't even know what's happening. That was such a rude awakening for me, because they would literally slap it on a wall at the last minute and say, hey, let's see if it sticks. Oh, you believe it? Hey, this is it, this is it. And I'm like, holy, this is the biggest scam ever. And that's when I started to believe they don't have the answer. I am an answer. Yes. And that's when I started to own my truth. And they just laughed. They like, shit, if you believe this stuff, And then you bought the lie. Don't get mad because you bought what they sold. And so that was the most critical moment of my life when I really literally, and they would say, I don't know what the hell is this. I don't know. I don't know. They would be in there just, carrying on like, what is this? And they would just try to figure it out. And it's like, okay, just go and say, this is what we're going to say. And because they said it, it was law. It was truth. And I said, well, would you look at this?
That shocked the mess out of me. Because
It's
I used
crazy.
to work at a tech startup. And I'd be like, y'all really gonna do that? And have a beer doing it?
Oh, yeah, they're real cool about it.
Oh, yeah.
So-
I'm enough.
I'm enough.
So
There you go.
I would compliment implicit bias cuts both ways. And Jess can speak to this, is what the media and other sources brainwash you into believe about yourself.
True.
And it also comes from within you, what you believe about others. So once you do find that truth, and you make that truth positive, and you share with others, you start to eliminate and free yourself from that implicit bias.
Absolutely.
And then you can share out of your space of just wanting to share because you know who you are, and then you can share because you realize you have a certain gift. Like I want there to be more social entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs. I want there to be little kids that grow up and say, hey, I started this and I started that. I want that. I want to share out because I'm not threatened by it, but I'm excited about the opportunity to serve. And you have to think of it as serving.
And I just think we're moving into that place. This is proof right here. This whole entire space is proof. Here in this is proof that maybe 15, 20, 30 years, racism, you'll be like, what? What is that?
I hope so.
What is that? I just feel like we're moving away. More people are adding different perspectives to the
My daughter
conversation.
called me racist the other day because I made a comment because I wanted to know, whose house she was going over. What did they look like? She said, that's racist. I said, how is it racist? We had this conversation, but she thought that I was, but she's 12, and she's aware of even certain things you don't say and how you say it because it could be perceived as that. So I think you're right. Our young people are moving into a more global thinking.
Definitely.
And Miss Jewel, her
I know
daughter,
he does.
she's a force, by the way. So I just think, but I'll say, if you get a chance, look up a professor named Dorothy Roberts. She's at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Roberts has what I think one of the best descriptions of it. She said, based on the data and research, there's only one race. It's the human race. And you have different ethnic groups. So once you recognize that commonality, that lets you know that a lot of this stuff is really superficial. People try to create barriers between them.
Absolutely. I often think about, again, when we talk about African Americans and how we are black, we're white, some of us are Spanish, and some of us are this, and some of us are that. It's just it's just crazy how this country has treated African American people, because most of us got white. So it's like, what? Your uncle's my grandpa, chill out.
Can I tell you a story about Jewel? So we just moved here from Maryland. We lived in Howard County, in Maple Lawn area. So it's a school. She went to Fulton Elementary, which is a school with all different races. So they had International Day. So Jewel signed us up. And she didn't tell me, well, she told me the day before when she signed us up. So I told you about my great-grandfather that was white. Well, he's Irish, right, from Ireland, right? So she put that we were Irish. So I had to go to the Irish table and I had to bring food that I never knew what Irish. So I brought Irish butter and bread. I didn't know what. And I said, and then she was like, I need Irish butter. That's all I could think of. And so we went to the international event, and it's white people standing there that are Irish, and then Jewel is standing there proud, like I'm Irish. And I said, Jewel, we couldn't go to the black people table. They sold food. I could make that. She was like, no, we're Irish. I said, yeah, but we're far from Irish. But it was so interesting that she was so excited about her history that she didn't just embrace she wasn't ashamed to stand there and say she's black. But she's saying I'm Irish, so she wasn't ashamed. She wanted to embrace all of her. And I think that that's amazing. The bread and butter, they were confused by it, but it worked. And I told her next year, we're going to the black table, okay?
So I think it's actually time for us to wrap up, because I feel like we've been up here for a while.
We have, yeah. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks again. If you have questions,